Hello, my name is Judd, and welcome to my Philosophy Corner. Today, I'm joined by my friend Nada.
Hello, I'm Nada.
Go ahead, introduce yourself for everyone.
So my name is Nada. I study philosophy at University of Tartu. This is my second year, and I'm originally from Egypt.
And what is it that you're working on with philosophy?
I work on social epistemology, which means I'm interested in conversations about knowledge in situated context. By that I mean I'm interested in knowledge when in relation to systematic oppression, in relation to power asymmetry, and I'm interested in conversations.
Yeah. So like racism, sexism, that's the kind of stuff that you work on a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Now Nada, today we're going to talk about trust. This is something that we've talked about a little bit before.
Yes.
So Nada, let's start with the word. What does trust mean to you? What is that word?
If we define trust as a relation between people, so I'm not gonna discuss it as a relation, let's say, between me and non-human objects like organizations or internet. Trust would be the ability to be vulnerable with one another. So
Okay.
for me, that's what trust is.
So you're kind of opening yourself up to this other person. Right?
Yes, and like vulnerability comes in like different ways. It just doesn't have to be, that you're in moment of weakness or in moment of need. It can be just, sharing your thoughts is a vulnerability. Existing in one place with another person is another form of vulnerability.
So why do you say vulnerability? I mean, that sounds like there's this potential for something to go wrong, right? Something can hurt you.
So because basically you allow yourself to socialize with people on daily levels without being vulnerable, because there is not a very personal relation between you, let's say, and another colleague. It's not very personal to the point where when both of you, let's say, share a specific activity, it can hurt you back.
Okay.
But trust, when it happens, it means that potentially the activities that you're doing with that person, if they are not trustworthy, it will like affect you or hurt you in a way.
Okay. So then that's what trust is to you. What about distrust? What does that mean? Just the negation of this vulnerability?
That's an interesting question.
Sure.
I'm not necessarily sure that it's just a negation of vulnerability, but I would say just distrust would be something like the lack of personal ties between you and the person to the level that you cannot be vulnerable in front of them, maybe.
All right, fair enough.
What about you? What is trust?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would be similar to yours, this sort of reliance on somebody that when you trust somebody, you have decided to forego a kind of like skepticism, right? Like you don't doubt that when you tell them something that they might go tell somebody else. You believe, you have faith that they will go and, I guess, keep the secret perhaps that you told them. So then with distrust, maybe it's the opposite in this regard, that you have these doubts that this person is not going to do what you think that they're going to do, right? Say, again, with a secret, if you don't trust somebody, you don't tell them a secret because you're afraid that they're going to go and tell somebody else, right? Okay. So we've understood now, like, our own different definitions of trust, distrust. Sounds like we're pretty much in line, same idea, generally. So then what about, like, in a cultural sense? So we come from completely different places, right? America and Egypt.
Yeah.
What is, like, the cultural collective view of trust in Egypt or in Qatar?
Honestly, I don't know, because I haven't seen conversations about like collective definition of trust in Egypt and in Qatar, but if I had to make a educated guess, it would be something similar to our ideas as well. It's the ability to rely on a person to the like maximum extent would be what trust is. And it's usually pre-assumed. So you pre-assume that you can trust your family, you pre-assume that you can trust your friends, and so on. So that's why I would say there is no discussion that, at least that I'm aware of trust, because it's something that is like pre-assumed.
Sure. So maybe there's not a discussion about it, but in a general sense, do you think people living in those countries, are they generally trustworthy of others or distrustworthy?
I would say most people would be trustworthy of others,
Okay.
or at least have some level of trust in one or more people. So I think generally, so this is also stemming from my view, I think generally humans assume that there is a level of trust
Mm-hmm.
between them and each other,
Mm-hmm.
and based on that level of trust, the trust, let's say, can accumulate to become more advanced in
Sure.
a way. So
So there's levels to this.
yeah, I would assume that. I think there is levels. So I would say everyone would be trustworthy of another unless something hurt them to the point where they cannot,
So they
Trust.
presuppose a trust, and then if they're proven wrong, then they distrust.
Yes.
Okay. So that sounds like maybe the opposite in the U.S. So we are a messy people in this regard. Like, we are innately distrustworthy. I mean, think about, the history of the U.S. We started off distrusting that the British monarchy is going to have our best interests in heart, right? And that's kind of reflected in our history, but even now, like, we start off distrusting another person, a stranger, and only when they prove to us that they're worthy of some trust do we do it. So yeah, it's this weird sense.
I mean, I would say there is like a fine line between just trusting a person by default and just have a very basic level of trust, like the human.
Just sort of like an openness to
Yes.
it. Yeah, okay.
So it's not that, the moment you meet someone, you would trust them immediately and like share your secrets with them, but you would at least consider, unless proven otherwise, they would be good. But again, I have to give a disclaimer that this is from my point of view
Of
of
course,
what happens in Egypt. Someone might come and tell you, no, it's the opposite. And since it's like in context, I think both views would be like correct. Because the concept of trust is like, it's really complex and personal at the same time. So everyone will reflect on the outside, given their point of view about what trust is.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all have different ideas of it, of course. So then in that case, what about you, Nada? Do you think that you are a trustworthy person or a distrustworthy person? Do you have trust issues?
Yes, but I think everyone have trust issues.
Okay.
I would say generally, I have very low expectations of people. So I would not say that I distrust everyone. I would just say I have a very, let's say, I will call it level 0 of trust. Level 0 means that, you're still very neutral to me. I will trust you, but not to something that would make me, let's say, vulnerable. I would just trust that we can work together on that project and finish it until you prove that we will do that or not.
So the first time we met, you were like, who is this guy? I'm neutral. In this regard.
It didn't even so it doesn't happen that I think about the person the moment I meet, whether they are trustworthy or not. As I said, it happens just by default, that it's a neutral level. And as you interact with people more, you either think that they are trustworthy or not. That's how it is for me.
So what is something that, let's say you meet somebody new, you have this neutral trust, you start talking, what is something that they may do, either verbally or non-verbally, that would like kind of hint to you like, I'm not gonna trust this person?
If they are dishonest, even like on the smallest stuff, then it might not necessarily mean that I would distrust them, but it would mean that I will not trust them more.
Okay.
So they will always like remain neutral.
At the 0, okay.
Because as I told you, it is personal. So trust is, comes on a very personal level, at least let's say the highest level of trust. So for me to reach that level with a person, we will need to like communicate, let's say, for a very long time, and based on that, I will realize, okay, I can trust that person to that level or not.
Sure.
So what about you?
Now I would say I'm a healthy, distrustful person. I think for most of my life, I was over-trusting with people. And, that's led me to in situations where, like that person perhaps hurt me, that I opened up this vulnerability and they struck at it, either knowingly or unknowingly. I I guess for most of my life, I'd go through and just, when I meet somebody, I want to hope that this is a person I can trust. I don't start from this 0 where you were, but maybe I start from like 5 out of 10, right? So yeah, but now I would say I'm at this level of like, I'm not quite sure. Like maybe 1 or 2, right? Like throw out a line to see if they're worthy of it. And if I see, say what you said, anything that would prove to me otherwise, I roll that thing back in and like, no, never mind.
So do you like test people to see if they are trustworthy or not?
No, I try not to be too, like, I wouldn't say manipulative, but like, I try not to talk with people with some sort of end goal in mind, right?
Yeah.
I just like to see it happen naturally or organically. Just, yeah, people, you talk with anybody for about 5-10 minutes, you can already kind of get a sense of who they are and maybe make some sort of assessment. Now, I mean, first impressions are everything, but it can also change. So, what about you? Like, where do your trust issues come from then? The deep question,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, honestly, I would say some stuff that happened, let's say, in my life, from close people, from close friends, from like family members, even if they were like small stuff, but because, you know, it just happens unwarranted. So, for example, let's say I tell a friend a secret, and I'm assuming that we're like best friends.
Yeah.
And then one day I realize everyone in the class, you know, knows the secret.
Oh, that's shitty.
So, although like it won't damage me in a sense that this secret will cause, let's say, bad consequences on me,
Some sort of
as a
trauma
person.
or something.
Yeah. But it breaks some sort of bond that I assume that we share.
Ah, the assumption,
And,
yeah.
So I would say just my trust issues are stemming from the fact that I don't put expectations on people.
Okay.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
as I meet someone, I don't expect them to be my friends. I don't expect them to be, let's say, my colleagues. I don't expect them to, for any reason, like, allow me to trust them, let's say, in a way, unless something else happens. And I would say usually people are so everyone is like very complex, and everyone have their own package. So everyone have trust issues, everyone is afraid of being vulnerable, and even some people are afraid of being trusty to others. So for example, some people might be afraid that you would trust them too much because, you know, they have issues, they are not dedicated.
They're not confident in their own capability.
Yeah, so I wouldn't call it like trust issues per se, I would just call it complex standards of
It's complex,
deep level
sure,
of trust, but I would say it's healthy because it's working for me. It's not stopping me from forming meaningful relations, but at the same time, I'm just, you know, not gonna go walk on the street, meet someone, trust them, and then get hurt the next day because for me, I didn't expect anything from them. Expectations come like later.
So you even said, like, when you meet somebody new, you don't have this expectation that they will be a friend.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where your resting bitch face comes from. No. But, you know, I like that idea that you brought up, like, people are afraid, right? Like, I'm sure every person in the world out there has had some instance where their trust was misused, and everyone is now, you know, built up some sort of wall and say, you know, unless somebody proves to me otherwise, I'm gonna just keep this wall up, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that that's, you know, caused a lot of issues maybe with people? I mean, you say it works for you, right?
Yeah.
But you also possibly have missed out on some connections that could have been fulfilling and meaningful.
Yeah, for me, if I missed out on something, it was not meant to be. So, I would say it's just, so let's put it this way. Imagine yourself like an onion. Sorry for the bad analogy.
All right, Shrek, go ahead.
And you have like different layers to you.
Mm-hmm.
And as you like peel yourself in front of someone, the more you peel, the more potential damage that can happen. So if I just present my persona as a full onion, I'm not certainly putting a wall. I'm still representing myself, but I'm just not allowing them like view of my inner layers in a
Nada the onion. Okay.
another the onion.
That's a good image in my head.
Yes, in everyone's head.
Yeah. So then let's get even more personal now. You've told me in general why you have trust issues, but can you think of any specific instance that has reinforced this idea in your head that like maybe I should walk this path of the generally distrustful way or neutral?
So until I think of an example, what about you?
Yeah,
Can
okay.
you tell us?
Yeah, sure. So like I said,
issues
yeah.
stemming from?
So I would say initially, like what I said, most of my life, I was an over-trusting person, and I honestly think that's going to be stemming from my childhood. I think a lot of things are going to be stemming from there, obviously. So, in my family, trust and that sort of thing was just not a practiced thing, I guess you could say. Like, I would very easily, catch my parents talking about something or not talking about something to avoid it. And, I guess throughout my life, I grew up with this perception of, this is how people talk normally, that we ought to avoid certain things, that we ought to lie because, it just, maybe it makes things easier. It keeps you out of trouble. So that's why I think I actually led to me being over trusting, because I was seeking some form of stability that I didn't have at home. So because I couldn't necessarily trust what was happening with my family, I was seeking that idea of trust in other people from other people. And it's only been recently that I've, I guess, discovered the fact that sometimes people just are, the kind of people who lie. And, I get why people lie sometimes. We lie because it makes things easier. Maybe it protects other people's feelings or that sort of thing, but that's not the sort of thing that I appreciate anymore. I'm the kind of person that I want honesty. I want to be able to trust somebody, but I also want them to show me that they're worthy of that. Yeah. So for me, it's, whenever I meet a new person, I want to be able to know right off the bat if this is a person who's honest, not just with me, but also with themselves, right?
Yeah.
So for instance, recently somebody said, I'm no longer feeling the same feelings between us, and, it's nothing that's your fault, it's something with mine. And at first, with my over-trustingness, I said, all right, like, that's fine, I get it, you're telling me the truth. And it was only after, when I started walking away and, I had this free mind to think about things, that I realized that this person was lying to me. That they were lying to me because, they're maybe trying to protect my feelings. They viewed me in a way where lying was perhaps the best option. That I'm the kind of person that deserves to be lied to because, maybe I'm weak or sensitive or, I don't know, something like that. So... And the way I took that is a person who lies in this sense, especially with somebody that you think you can trust, they think that they know better than you do about what the truth should be, right? They are the ones dictating and deciding what you should know about your life. And so that's kind of what led me to believe, all right, let's just, walk a more neutral path like you do, perhaps.
Yeah, it's the best way. It works. I don't advise it for anyone.
I'm gonna go about it in an open way and try and learn a little bit more. But for now, I'm happy that I'm not an over-trusting person. I think, just a drip of skepticism is good. What about you now? I've shared my deep story of my life.
I mean, my story is not that deep, and it's gonna be very cryptic, let's say. But I was young and naive kid, let's say in grade 5, and I had a best friend, and she, let's say, did something that reflected badly on me because people assumed that I did this thing, and she acted in a way that made it, in case, let's say, she got caught, that it would be me the one blamed for. And I was like in the dark about that thing that she did for like a very long period of time. And when it surfaced as if it's something that I did. So the thing happened, life goes on, but I would say this is the first time I was genuinely hurt by a friend.
Okay.
So
what do you think the feeling or the go-to emotion is when you've put your trust in somebody and they prove otherwise, that they weren't worthy of that. What do you feel?
You feel hurt. I mean, for me, honestly, so we have something in Egypt called asham,
Mm-hmm.
and asham is basically your expectation of a person,
Mm-hmm.
given your relation and how close is your relationship or friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And when they don't do something that is not necessarily, let's say, that they mandatory have to do, but it's something that you expect from them given the relation, they بيكسروا عشمك, so they literally break your expectations. And these expectations are not just, general expectations. These are ones that are stemming from the nature of your relation. So you know that in the person in front of you have autonomy to do whatever they want to do, even if it hurts you, but you expect that they will not do it because you're close friends. And when they do something other than that, you feel hurt and you feel like, I really expected you to do X, but you didn't do X, which hurts me.
Sure.
But yeah.
What about like big picture emotion though? Like, do you feel sad? Do you feel angry? What is it that you feel in those moments?
Honestly, I don't feel angry because I don't know why. I just don't. I feel really hurt. And by hurt I mean very sad.
Okay.
/ heartbroken, but this seems a bit dramatic, but it doesn't happen a lot to be like heartbroken, but it really makes you feel very lonely.
Sure.
And it reflects on the fact that you then feel vulnerable because you had expectations from someone. These expectations were, combined. I don't know if I pronounced the word correct. Combined by some vulnerability that you have.
Sure. Yeah.
And the moment they break this trust, they break the expectation, boom, you're vulnerable. So you will feel that.
Okay. Yeah, see, for me, I feel angry. Not in like a toxic masculine way, but like I feel angry that somebody has misused the trust that I gave them. And for me, when I feel this, it's an anger that is fueled by this idea of like, it's unfair, right? Like I did something that I believe to be a good thing and somebody did something wrong. So for me, that was unfair. And so I get angry at that. I get angry at them for doing it, but I get angry at myself also for putting myself in that position and being wrong about it, right? So yeah, like for me, it's this, I guess, feeling of unfairness, even though, what is fair in life?
Yeah. I would say I don't get angry for the same reason that you actually mentioned. I don't look to it as if it's fair or unfair because I have this let's say basic belief that at any point any person can do whatever they want to do.
Sure.
So even if I think of what they did as unfair to me, in the bigger picture, let's say, it really doesn't matter. So what I focus on more or less is just my other emotions, which are like just sadness.
Sure.
Or something.
So what's something now, let's kind of wrap this up. What's something that you think you or I or anybody listening can take away from this conversation about trust?
I'd say, first of all, people need to recognize that trust comes in different levels. It doesn't necessarily come in one or zero situation. And people need to realize how to regulate, their trust between each other. So don't just walk in the street, find a guy in a cab and trust him fully.
Sure.
Because we have seen a lot of movies and how this ends.
Sure.
And don't go to a very close friend of you and and you built a huge relation and just assume that they are distrusting or something, or not trustworthy.
So you're saying people should be a bit more aware of their own trust and the trust in general as well.
Yeah, and they need to communicate it. So I think a lot of difficulties that arise from relations, and especially when it comes to the concept of trust, is people don't communicate with each other the level of trustiness that they have, what are their expectations, what would hurt them. So if anyone takes anything, just communicate.
Communication, I think that is good. I think a lot of people are almost very passive in their communication, especially in relation with trust.
Yeah.
That because maybe we're afraid of it, because it seems like such a powerful thing to place on somebody else, we feel nervous to want to talk about it with this other person, right? Yeah, I don't know. Do you trust me, Nada?
I do, to a degree, yeah.
To a degree? Oh. No, that's fair. All right. I trust you. To a degree.
Yes.
All right, Nada. Well, hey, thank you for this discussion. It was awesome.
Thank you, Jared.
Yeah. And everyone, thank you for listening. And let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you next time.
Bye-bye.